Hello and welcome to MEELive. Join us as together we take another look at the headlines that are shaping our world.
We are broadcasting live to YouTube from Middle East Eye's headquarters here in London.
I'm Mohammed Hassan.
And I'm Matilda Mallinson. Today is Thursday, the 15th of May. Mohammed, what have we got coming up?
Well, if you have any Syrians in your life, then you know that they will be celebrating this week because of historic news. Syria is finally having its sanctions lifted by the United States. This came as a shock announcement from the US President Donald Trump on Tuesday when he was in Saudi Arabia. It's part of his trip, his visit to the region and the Gulf countries, and we'll be talking about that. But more specifically, what does it mean for these sanctions to be lifted? What does it mean for Syrians and the future of Syria? That's what we'll be diving into. What about you?
Okay. Well, I'm looking at the UK, where the atmosphere is a little less jubilant among some populations following Keir Starmer's speech at the beginning of this week, which was about immigration and which was widely seen as a sort of hard driving of the Labour Party towards the right wing on the immigration question. Starmer, however, repeatedly said in his speech that that's not what he's doing, that he has integrity, and that this is in keeping with what Labour's promises on immigration always were. So I will be analysing that speech and looking at the Labour Party manifesto, speaking to politicians in the Labour Party who may not feel the same as Starmer, and also, of course, people on the ground who are directly affected.
So the political and the personal. I think that's really a good way to look at it, and I can't wait to listen to both of those voices.
Thank you.
Well, let's have a look at the headlines.
Headlines.
Optimism and threats of violence. That's the latest message from Donald Trump on Iran's high-stakes nuclear talks. On his third day visiting the region, the US president said the two countries were closer than ever to inking a new deal that would curb Iran's nuclear program while lifting sanctions Trump himself imposed during his first term in office. Trump says he's working closely with Qatar's government on negotiations with Iran, but warned that a military option was still on the table if Iran didn't stop sponsoring terrorism and proxy war.
Nuclear dust in Iran, and we've been strong. I want them to succeed. I want them to end up being a great country, frankly, but they can't have a nuclear weapon. That's the only thing. I think we're getting close to maybe doing a deal without having to do this. There's two steps. There's a very, very nice step, and there's a violent step. The violence like people haven't seen before. And I hope we're not going to have to do this. I don't want to do the second step.
Iran's President Masoud Pezeshkian hit back at Trump's comments, saying the country will not, quote, bow down to any bully.
And while high hopes hung on new developments from Trump towards a ceasefire in Gaza, the US president instead re-emphasized his desire to take control of the Strip himself, saying he wants to turn it into a freedom zone. Despite successfully pushing for a ceasefire back in January, the Trump administration has since backed down, allowing Israel to resume its daily bombing campaign, as well as a crippling 2-month blockade of food, water, and medicine. The United Nations says more than 2 million Palestinians are at risk of famine, with many resorting to desperate measures to feed themselves and their families in what experts describe as catastrophic levels of food insecurity. This comes as Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says Israel's army will enter Gaza with full force in the coming days, saying there will be no situation where we stop the war.
And Volodymyr Zelensky has hit out at Russia, accusing the Kremlin of sending stand-in props instead of Vladimir Putin at peace talks which began in Turkey today. The Ukrainian president responded to a last-minute confirmation from Moscow this morning that Putin will not in fact be attending, despite insisting Russia was ready for serious talks. Zelensky confirmed he will not be attending peace talks in Ankara either, instead opting to send his defense minister after Putin's snub. The news dashed hopes of a groundbreaking three-way meeting between Putin, Zelensky, and US President Donald Trump, whose bid to rapidly pressure both sides into a diplomatic agreement has been repeatedly thwarted. Trump earlier hinted at diverting from his Gulf tour to join talks in Istanbul, but is not expected to attend in Putin's absence and has so far refrained from commenting on the Russian president's absence.
I was thinking about going, but it's very tough because of what we're doing today and tomorrow. But If something happened, I'd go on Friday if it was appropriate. But we have people right now negotiating, and I think that I just hope that Russia and Ukraine are able to do something because it has to stop.
Earlier this week, Zelensky sent a warning message that a no-show by Putin would be a clear sign that Russia was not serious, and has instead called on the US to pressure Russia with strong sanctions as punishment.
Санкції за те, що вони не хочуть, навіть припинення вогню. Це повинен бути найсильніший пакет санкцій, бо це є воля до закінчення війни, або ні. Тобто це чіткий сигнал, що вони не хочуть і не збираються закінчувати війну. Або навпаки, вони продемонструють, що вони не тільки з ядерною зброєю серйозні, але і без неї на щось спроможні.
And finally, Sudan has entered a new phase of its devastating war, weeks after the army's recapture of Khartoum. Since being driven from the capital, the rival Rapid Support Forces have launched drone strikes and suicide attacks in Port Sudan, causing displacement, power blackouts, and water shortages in the country's main seaport. The attacks signal technological advancements in the RSF's arsenal, leading to fresh accusations from Sudan's army that foreign actors are supporting the paramilitary group. The army's leader, General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, made global headlines in March when he told cheering troops in the newly captured Paris, "Khartoum is free, it's over." But speaking to MEELive, Sudanese activist Amin Mekki warned more violence would indeed come, and he urged the outside world to keep eyes on Sudan.
As to the question of how, if the war is over, I think we're still a long way from peace in Sudan. We've been called the world's, forgotten crisis, but I think most Sudanese people like to use the word ignored because it does feel like we're being ignored.
Now stay with us as we turn to Donald Trump's visit to the Middle East and his historic announcement that he's lifting sanctions on Syria.
As to the question of how, if the war...
I will be ordering the cessation of sanctions against Syria in order to give them a chance at greatness.
This was perhaps the moment that has defined Donald Trump's visit to the Middle East so far. In a surprise announcement on Tuesday, the US president said he's lifting decades-old economic sanctions on Syria's government after lobbying from Saudi Arabia and Qatar. The impacts in Syria were felt immediately. Thousands took to the streets to celebrate what many Syrians feel was one of the main roadblocks in their pursuit to rebuild their war-torn country after the fall of the Assad regime in December. The US has sanctioned Syria since 1979, when Hafez al-Assad was labeled a state sponsor of terrorism. It then ramped up those sanctions after his son Bashar al-Assad's brutal crackdown on anti-government protesters in 2011, as the country spiraled into civil war. The historic announcement was then followed by more unexpected news. Syria's new president, Ahmed al-Shara, would meet with Trump in person. Al-Shara then flew to Riyadh on Wednesday, where the two leaders appeared to get along quite well. Donald Trump described the Syrian counterpart as a tough guy and a fighter, referring to his background as a rebel leader and fighter formerly associated with Al-Qaeda in Iraq. Al-Shara's rebel group Hizb Tahrir al-Sham was previously designated by the US as a terrorist organization with a $10 million bounty placed on his head. So what does this mean for Syria? Well, to tell us more, we're joined now by Syrian journalist and political commentator Siba Yasser Madwar. Siba, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me, Mohammed and Matilda. Good evening.
Now, let's begin with the reaction in Syria to this announcement. A few people saw it coming and the reaction was swift. How are Syrians feeling after this?
Yes, Muhammad, exactly what you said. It's like economic salvation. It's like the first step for recovery again, then not to rebuild actually Syria, to build Syria from the rubble. You know how much Syrians suffered for more than a decade, and also not only from 2011, actually also before the revolution, and we know the GDP contraction of over 70%. The lira, the Syrian pound, lost more than 80 or 90 maybe of its value, and people are restricted to access a lot of products, a lot of essential goods, water, electricity, fuel, and a lot of stuff that we can consider it as like minimum we should have it. They don't have it. So more than 10 years. So lifting sanctions, it means for them, it means life. If you read some comments on social media, you will cry how people, they are really happy, say that, oh, again, we will eat chocolate, again, we will have oil, again, we will have fuel, again, we will see bank SWIFT, again, we can take the transaction money from our relatives, from our people outside without any commission for here and there in the black market. So it's a huge impact for Syrian people. Actually, it's like a blessing from the heaven to exactly for recovery and build their future they dream so long.
Now, I know that in the weeks and months after the fall of the Assad regime, there were millions of Syrians that went back home. And part of that was this idea that they needed to reinvest in their own country that had been cut off from the world for so long. Now, of course, as the government is attempting to bring back this country and rebuild it, investment from the outside is essential. What will this mean now for these conversations, this attempt to try and bring people from the outside to reinvest in the future of Syria?
Mohammed, yesterday, the Syrian president and transitional government now, Ahmed al-Shara, said in his very brief speech a very interesting point that he welcomed Syrian capitals from outside, and he welcomed also Turkish capitals, Turkish businessmen and Qatari businessmen, and from all the globe. So we can understand here that now he wants to release the economy to be a liberal economy as much as he can. But of course, we need restrictions, we need a legal framework, we need economic sovereignty, a lot of procedures we need. But in the first step, he knows that he needs money from outside, because actually Syria doesn't have any resources for now, or any economy can produce now a real economy. So this is very important, and I say again, and I think that also with this we need legal framework to protect Syrian businessmen in the first place. Mohammed, lifting sanctions, it's not only for Syria, I think. It's not the step as this decision for Syria. It's a decision for the region and US. I think, and you know, Trump is not only peacemaker, and he doesn't want to only to be a peacemaker, but he deal maker. So from this decision, he knows that there are a lot of interest inside Syria for America first, as his doctrine in all decisions he takes in America or outside. And here we can talk more, if you want, geopolitically, regionally, and also about Syria and its future with the neighbors and in the region. We can see exactly the new Middle East, exactly new actors, exactly new allies, and exactly new ties between these actors.
Now, let's talk about the Syrian President, Ahmed al-Shara. Now, just not long ago, the United States had a $10 million bounty on his head. Now here he is meeting with the President of the United States. What did you make of this meeting?
Mohammed, if we if we read the history, we can see a lot of examples like this. Let's remember Jerry Adams from IRA. And his friend from Sinn Féin, Martin, remind me his surname. Okay, Magnuses, I think. So they were labeled terrorists, and then the negotiation happened, and peace done with them, and then they met the Queen. So everything changed and can be changed. And negotiation, it's for to talk to your enemies and have like common space between them. So people also change. So, and Ahmad al-Shara, in our example, in our case in Syria, we see Ahmad al-Shara really has shown a lot of dramatic changes in his attitudes and in his vision for Syria. And we can't say that he was terrorist. He just what he did inside Syria. And he said in many times that he was just only against Assad and the regime. So, and again, what he did, and in 5 months before that, he's trying to make agreement with Kurdish forces and with the Druze as well. And he gave a lot of pledges and tried to say and actually take actions about this nation for all Syrians. So I think that gives a lot of signs for the US, and that there is a opportunity. And also don't forget that the support from region, especially Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and Turkey, they know that they need stable Syria, and they need stable security for a lot of issues in the regions. That's why Ahmad al-Shara may be the only man now can understand all factions inside Syria and can feel the emptiness and vacuum in Syria. So I think regardless the history, regardless the decisions during Obama and Biden eras. So now we are witnessing different era, different shift in the geopolitical landscape in the region, in the mindset, of course, of foreign policy, U.S. foreign policy in the Middle East.
Now, I just want to make a small note about Jerry Adams. You mentioned him. He has always denied having any connection to the IRA officially, but I do take your point. You know, Nelson Mandela is a great example of somebody who was designated as a terrorist in this country, in the United Kingdom, and then, of course, celebrated as a civil rights hero. Now, President Trump was also asked about whether he thinks Syria will normalize ties with Israel. Let's have a listen to what he said.
Yeah, but I think they have to get themselves straightened out. I told him, I hope you're going to join when it's straightened out. He said yes. But they have a lot of work to do.
This has been a controversial, decision. There's been pressure from the U.S. on al-Shara to take some steps towards normalizing with Israel. Of course, Israel has been bombing Syria over the last couple of months. Do you think this will happen? And if so, how would Syrians react to it?
Mohammed, we don't know until now if it will happen or not. It's not like yes, no answer, or it's not like overnight. You know that this is very sensitive and complex issue. And al-Shara can't decide by himself only. He is chosen by coalition and many revolutionaries. So this decision should be studied among a lot of people, actually, a lot of who are in the cabinet now. So we can't say maybe it will happen, maybe not. We don't know. Everything changed, but we need to see signs. I think if it will happen, it will not happen in the way that happened with the other countries in the region. We maybe see like non-engagement agreement or incremental agreement or incremental normalization, something like only related to security, that security ties maximum now, because the mood still in Syria, people, public opinion is still not prepared for this step, and Ahmed al-Shara knows how much this issue can be sensitive in the street and among people and in public opinion. But let's see it, wait and see. And we heard that what the White House announced about that, Donald Trump urged for that. But again, I don't think that it will happen overnight. It takes a lot and long way to pave the way, and it needs a lot from also Israel. So I don't think that will happen, or maybe at least not in the short time.
Siba Yasser Madwar, we appreciate your time. Syrian political commentator and broadcaster. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Muhammad. Thank you, Matilda.
Now, following yesterday's meeting in Riyadh, Syrian President Ahmed al-Shara called the decision by Trump to lift sanctions historic and courageous, saying it will alleviate the suffering of Syrian people and lay the foundations for stability in the region.
ولن تكون سوريا بعد اليوم ساحة لصراع النفوذ ولا منصة للأطماع الخارجية، ولن تسمح بتقسيم سوريا، ولن نسمح بتقسيم سوريا، ولن نفسح المجال لإحياء سرديات النظام السابق لتفتيت شعبنا. سوريا لكل السوريون، سوريا لكل السوريين بكافة طوائفها وأعراقها، ولكل من يعيش على هذه الأرض المباركة. التعايش هو إرثنا عبر التاريخ، وأن الانقسامات التي مزقتنا كانت دائما بفعل التدخلات الخارجية، واليوم نرفضها جميعا.
That was Syrian President Ahmed al-Shara. Meanwhile, Donald Trump left Qatar this morning for Abu Dhabi, the final leg of his week-long visit to the region. The U.S. president will look to discuss a number of investment deals with the UAE, including a controversial F-35 fighter jet deal previously sidelined under the Biden administration. This follows Trump's announcements of $240 billion deals inked in Qatar that include the purchase of 200 American-made Boeing 787 Dreamliners, as well as a $142 billion weapons deal with Saudi Arabia, part of a larger set of investments in the energy and AI sectors. Now, to tell us more, we're joined by MEE reporter Mohammed Saleh, who is in Doha. Mohammed, thank you for joining us.
Hello, Mohammed. Thank you for having me.
So tell me, you've been here in Doha for the last day while Trump has been in town. Doha's a small place. What's the atmosphere been like?
The atmosphere is quite clear that Trump is in town. As you can see behind me, there's several U.S. flags lining most of the roads, most of the main roads. When Trump arrived, a lot of the roads were closed as Doha is a small place. There's a sense of, I think at the start there was a bit of a sense of slight bit of anxiety as to what the trip will constitute. But he left and I think we're interesting, yeah.
Now, there were many hopes that a lot of geopolitical issues that are hanging over the region, the ceasefire in Gaza, the Iran deal, the relationships with the Houthis would be resolved, but it seems that Trump had different priorities in mind. What do you make of his trip so far?
I mean, it was a very quick visit. It was 2 days in Saudi Arabia, 2 days in Qatar, and now 2 days or maybe a day in the UAE. So that's a relatively short time to solve some of these very complex issues. But Trump came with both his businessman hat on and his kind of presidential diplomatic hat on. But it seemed he, I would say, used the businessman kind of role a lot more. He made several huge deals in both Saudi Arabia and in Qatar, and we're yet to see what comes out of the UAE. In Saudi Arabia, we were kind of hearing that there would be that golden $1 trillion of Saudi investment into several American sectors number, but it was about $600 billion by the end of it, which of course is still huge. And in terms of the diplomacy, I think the move to lift sanctions off of Syria was huge, and him meeting Ahmed al-Shara, president of Syria, was another big deal. But then there was the other topics, such as getting a ceasefire in Gaza, considering that the Qataris are leading the diplomatic and negotiation efforts. Additionally, a potential nuclear peace deal with Iran. Qatar is pushing for that heavily. The Emir, Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani, he mentioned that the Qataris would be keen for that, but it seems neither of these were achieved. In terms of the business transactions with Qatar, as you mentioned, there was the deal with Boeing, which is the biggest deal in Boeing's history. And then there was an additional $10 billion worth of investment, Qatari investment, in the US airbase, the Al Udeid airbase, which is the biggest US airbase in the Middle East. So there were many striking kind of moments that stood out. But on the diplomatic side, we can have a bit more of a discussion about that.
Let's dig a little bit more into what's happening with Gaza and the ceasefire. We heard threats from Benjamin Netanyahu that he is going to send in the army for a more intensive attack than we have seen over the last 2 months since he unilaterally broke that ceasefire. There's been tensions between him and Trump. And can you tell us a little bit about that?
Definitely, I think those tensions between him and Trump are being felt in several places. Firstly, the US starts negotiating with Hamas almost directly through the mediators in Qatar and in Egypt, and they Hamas releases one hostage, one captive. Forgot his name, something Alexander.
Eden Alexander.
And that, pardon?
Eden Alexander, that was his name.
Yeah, exactly. So that kind of pushes Trump to the sidelines a little bit, and that obviously pushes Netanyahu to the sidelines, and that frustrates Netanyahu, and that frustration is felt immediately in Gaza, where there were several massacres, deadly, huge massacres over the past couple of days. Several hospitals were bombed in the past 48 hours. That's a massive, massive escalation. The famine is ongoing, the starvation is ongoing due to Israel's complete blockade of Gaza, which is now into its 75th day. So these and Trump getting closer to, he's already very close to some of these Middle Eastern leaders, particularly the young ones, MBS and Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani. So these kind of things frustrate Netanyahu, and the direct negotiation between the US and Hamas, this pushes Netanyahu to the sidelines. And that would discourage him more from going into more negotiations for a potential full ceasefire deal, which is something the Qataris were pushing for. So this relationship between Trump and Netanyahu is looking not great, and the ramifications for that are unfortunately very deadly. And Netanyahu, of course, the war going on is a political survival for him. So there's many factors at play.
And we'll keep an eye on the situation as it evolves. Mohammed Saleh in Doha there. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
And you can follow all our updates on Trump's final day in the Middle East. Tomorrow, I'm sure there's going to be headlines coming out of that. And of course, keep up to date with our day-to-day coverage on the ground in Gaza. You can find all of that on our website at middleeasteye.net. Now stay tuned as we speak to Labour MP Bel Ribeiro Addy about the UK's new controversial immigration reform.
I'm doing this because it is right, because it is fair, and because it is what I believe in. We risk becoming an island of strangers, not a nation that walks forward together.
Keir Starmer's declared crackdown on legal immigration is dominating UK headlines as rebels in his own party condemn the turn in Labour's rhetoric on migrants. While Starmer insisted the integrity of his policies and their alignment with his own political beliefs, others likened Starmer's words to the notoriously nationalistic Enoch Powell and accused him of steering the historically left-wing Labour Party in a hard right direction. Bel Ribeiro Addy is one Labour MP who tweeted in protest. She wrote on X that this was an insult to those who have made the UK our home, and she rejected the labelling of foreign residents here as strangers. But immigration has dominated the political agenda for years, so is this really a break from Labour's traditional base, or is it a bid to finally address their concerns? In Labour's 2024 general election manifesto, the party did in fact pledge to reduce net migration, blaming the Conservative government for a spike in legal workforce immigration, despite its leaders having campaigned for Brexit in a bid to take back control of UK borders. But Labour's criticism of immigration was not made on nationalistic grounds. It was presented as an objection to exploiting foreign labour, neglecting unemployed Brits, and damaging UK working conditions overall. Workers' rights are fundamental to Labour's founding ethos, and moments of Starmer's immigration speech did recall them.
Britain must compete for the best talent in the world, in science, in technology, in healthcare. You can't simply pull up a drawbridge, let nobody in, and think that's an economy that would work. That would hurt the pay packets of working people without question. But at the same time, we do have to ask why parts of our economy seem almost addicted to importing cheap labour, rather than investing in the skills of people who are here and want a good job in their community.
But something notable about Labour's campaign before they came to power in 2024, it was a refusal to follow rival parties in pinning immigration to the top of their agenda, parties that it ultimately beat. A Labour government's top 5 missions would be the economy, energy, policing, education, and the NHS, their manifesto promised. Immigration was conspicuously absent. The manifesto even numbered the first policies that Labour would introduce, but as these headlines on screen show, since they came to power, a number of their priority policies have been watered down or postponed. Meanwhile, immigration has come to the forefront. These are the 5 priorities listed in their manifesto. As you can see, immigration was absent. Now, Starmer's speech on Tuesday marks an end to his party's refusal to paint net immigration as one of the UK's leading problems. And many of the policies he led with and the rhetoric he used had nothing to do with the workforce or working conditions in the UK.
Every area of the immigration system, work, family and study, will be tightened up, will finally take back control of our borders and close the book on a squalid chapter for our politics, our economy and our country. We will finally honour what take back control meant and begin to choose who comes here.
So, as you can imagine, Starmer's words have triggered some political turmoil within his own party, many saying that this is not a Labour policy at all. But beyond Westminster, their impact is being felt on the ground by people who fear how these policies will be implemented in real life. So before we look at the political question, we're going to look at the real life situation. These policies may not just affect people hoping to come to the UK, but many who have been here for years already and who were close to naturalisation. You see, Starmer announced that the number of years it will take to achieve citizenship in the UK will be doubled from 5 to up to 10 years. Now, Duna Ahmed is a Syrian in the UK whose own settlement process has been delayed. It was seemingly suspended when the Assad regime toppled in Syria in December, and the UK government responded by immediately suspending decisions on Syrian claims. She herself would be eligible for citizenship if it wasn't for this delay in her indefinite leave to remain, on which she's actually had no formal communication or explanation from the Home Office. But now the Prime Minister has just announced that the amount of time she would have to wait anyway would be doubled. So here to join us to talk about the real-life impact of this delay, and not just the administrative impact, is Duna Ahmed. Duna, welcome to MEELive.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me.
Starmer has announced plans to double the amount of time before people can apply to citizenship. As someone who's close to being eligible and only waiting on your leave to remain, how did this announcement make you feel?
Just as a refugee, I came to this country. I didn't seek asylum when I first arrived in the UK because I didn't want to stay. Everybody wants to be home with family, so I didn't want to stay. I just wanted to come back to my country. And then when I found out that it's difficult and it's actually impossible to come back to my country, I had to stay here. So as a refugee, I always have this sense of uncertainty. So those kinds of rules that they just announce, and like it just deepens the uncertainty that we live with. It just like gives more things to be uncertain about. It gives more things to worry about. I have lots of things to worry about my family in Syria, about my parents, and about my situation here, about feeling a stranger. So it just deepens the amount of uncertainty. And every time when you feel that you as a person, you've just built something, you've built a life, and you're about to start your life, something just happens and tells you, no, you should like start from the scratch, or your life here, everything you've worked here. I've been here since 2016, 2017. I've worked very hard. Since the moment I entered this country, I've been paying taxes, I've been working, contributing to society. I did a lot to integrate it in the British community. So I just like everything now is just going. Like I lost everything.
Duna, I understand that one of the consequences of the delays in your personal immigration process mean that you and your husband are not allowed to travel. And I'm sorry to hear this. I also understand his mother is very unwell and he can't see her. Can you just quickly talk us through that situation and how you're both coping?
So the idea is that we applied for we came to the UK in 2016, as I said, or 2017 actually. So I came on a scholarship from the UK government, and I finished my scholarship, started working immediately after finishing my scholarship. As I said, I was working and paying taxes. So my work currently, it's focused on the MENA. So I work for the Middle East and North Africa. So I'm required a lot to travel there. And my employer sent many messages to the Home Office saying that I am essential and I must be in some places because I'm the only Arabic speaker, and I should go to evaluate some projects that we have. And it's really essential to the project that I be there. So I applied 3 months before the fall down of the Assad regime in Syria. I applied in September. And when I applied, my employer sent a message to the Home Office, and I sent a message to my MP, and my MP also said that he took it to the Home Office and asked if they can help me in getting the ILR as soon as possible because I'm needed to travel. The Home Office didn't do anything. My husband's mother, also she's very ill, she's dying, and he hasn't seen her in 9 years. And he also wrote a medical report about her situation, and he sent it to the Home Office, and they promised that they will do their best to help. They didn't help at all. And then the Assad regime fall. When the Assad regime actually, when the toppling happened in Syria, we were wondering, we are applying for an ILR. We are not applying for an asylum, a new application. We are already refugees here. We finished the 5 years, more than 5 years actually, but the 5 formal years, we finished it. So we were wondering, does this suspension include us? So we asked the Home Office, they said, no, it doesn't include you because you already finished your 5 years. So I was like, okay, I will wait. The time frame for the ILR is 6 months. So I said, I will wait. I don't have anything else to do. They said in the email, when they sent me the email after I applied for the ILR, they said that you will hear from us no later than 12 of March. And after 12 of March, you should hear from us. If you don't, you should you can contact us and you can complain. So I started complaining. I started sending many emails. They totally ignored me. And then they just came back about 2 weeks ago saying that, oh, sorry, we just saw your complaints and we will give you give you an answer after 20 working days. And my employer sent another message saying that I have an essential work trip by the end of May and I should take it. And I was sending them, I was very angry, you are treating me like an object. You're saying 20 working days, and I have my life on stake, my career. My husband's mother is dying. He's waking up in tears every day. And they just said in an email, and this was horrible for me and make me very angry. You can withdraw your application and travel, and your husband can travel to Syria to see his mother, but you can't come back here. So I just feel this is horrible. You're asking me to leave everything that I've been building here in this country for a long time, and I have a connection with this country. I have my home, I have mortgage, and I'm working. It's not that easy. The Syrian regime is gone, so everybody's coming back to Syria. It's not that easy. So why everything happens in the world, you take it on refugees? The Assad regime was killing us for 14 years. We haven't seen you suspending the the things that Assad family has here in the UK. We haven't seen you doing anything to help Syrian people. And now Assad regime is gone. Okay, let's just take it on refugees. Let's stop their application. Let's stop their lives. Those applications and papers are our lives. Those applications are like literally just taken from my health now. And I see my husband. The idea is that I can't even support him. Like, I need someone to support me. We can't support each other. Like, as a couple, we can't really support each other because I can't even think about my family that I haven't seen in like 8 years. I haven't seen my family. I don't know my niece. I don't know my nephews. I'm not thinking about those luxuries, although they are not luxuries. But for people like us, this is luxury. Like, think about seeing your parents. I'm thinking about keeping my job and not losing my job. I'm thinking about not losing my husband. I'm thinking about my husband's mother if she died now and he hasn't seen her, and he's in like this very difficult position of staying here with me or going back to see his mother and not being able to come and join his wife. This is I don't know, this is really horrible.
Duna, firstly, I'm so sorry that you and your husband and your whole family are having to deal with this. You mentioned within that outline that your workplace had actually contacted the Home Office and said that you needed to have a decision on your case as a matter of professional urgency from their point of view. Could you lose your job if your leave to remain isn't processed by the government?
It's like, it's not, I haven't lost it now, but I might lose it later because, you know, every time they extend my work permit, and like they can't extend my work permit until the work permit ends. So they've already extended when I finished my ILR. So like my 5 years residency here, it was like expired, so they had to renew it. They renewed it, and now my employer, every time when the HR they talk to me, I just like, it's a horrible situation. I think about like the worst scenario all the time. I'm sending them, I'm saying that I'm losing my job, I'm losing my career, this career that I've been working on for my whole life, and you just make me lose it. So I haven't lost it yet, but yeah, because I'm required. I'm the only Arabic speaker, and my work is for the MENA, so I'm required to be in certain places and certain times, and I've already lost many opportunities to be there. So I don't know how much time my work will stay. I don't know, cope up with me not being able to be in the MENA while I'm required to be in the MENA. My job actually is like, I'm a MENA person. I should go to the MENA. They had me because I'm an Arabic speaker, and they wanted me to be in the MENA. So I don't know, actually. I don't blame them because they need someone to go and like do things, the work that, like, this is not about emotions. It's not about they don't want me or they hate me or they're not trying to help. They try to help lots of times. They send lots of emails. The idea is that one of the emails also was very, very disappointing, is that when I told the Home Office that I know some Syrians who got their ILR, and you are saying no one is getting the ILR. So it just looks like they don't really know what they are doing, because they said, oh, sorry, then they got it because we are evaluating the cases on individual basis, urgency. I sent them an email. I was also very hungry, so like very angry on them. Like, what is more urgent than a man who is losing his mother? What is more urgent than a person who's losing their job? My job, my husband doesn't work. I'm the only one who works. And I said this many times to them. My husband doesn't, he lost his job last year, and I'm the only one who works. And if I lost my job, I lose my mortgage. I've been like working so hard to have my home here and to have like some kind of stability. And now they are just taking this from me again.
Duna, I'm sorry to have made you go into detail with what is clearly a really, really distressing situation. One of the reasons I wanted to focus on that detail is that Keir Starmer, when he laid out his new immigration proposal, justified it on the grounds that this will be about fairness in the workplace, among other things, about focusing on skills that we need, and given that your multilingualism is a key part of your role that is being obstructed right now. I thought that this was relevant because it indicates flaws in how these policies are materializing in real life compared to how the government is saying or the reasons the government is saying they're being brought in. Now, aside from working conditions in the UK, Keir Starmer gave one other key justification for Labour's new policies on immigration. And that was about encouraging migrants in the UK to integrate. It was about integration. Let's just hear quickly what he said.
When people come to our country, they should also commit to integration, to learning our language. And our system should actively distinguish between those that do and those that don't.
How important is integration to you as a Syrian who's been living in the UK for 7 years? And do you think that these policies, including the citizenship delay, will improve integration or not?
Of course it won't, because how can you integrate in a country which tells you all the time that you're not part of this country? It reminds you that you are a stranger. I did my best to integrate, and I love this country. It gave me a new home when I lost my home. It gave me lots of opportunities. I don't deny that. I met many amazing people. At the same time, the rules and the government just reminds us all the time that you are not part of this country. You are a stranger. It's when they say something like you can withdraw your application and go, but you won't be able to come back to the UK. It's literally they are throwing us. So how can I integrate in a country who doesn't want me? How can I integrate in a country which says all the time that I came here because I wanted to come here? I love the UK. I'm not saying that. It's my second home. But the idea is that I'm a refugee. I didn't choose to be a refugee. I didn't choose to be in a war situation in my country, and I didn't choose to be unsafe in my country and like stuck here. Nobody chooses to be away from the family. I haven't seen my parents in 8 years. I told you, I don't know my nieces and nephews. They were born while I was here, and having the citizenship means that I can come back and see them. Every time when they delay my citizenship, although I deserve the citizenship because I've been here since 2017, so I deserve the citizenship, but those new rules, they talk about integration, but they don't make any contributions or any steps to help people being integrated. They are there's this kind of feeling that we are not wanted. Every time anything happens, okay, this is because of refugees. Refugees are bad to our economy. Refugees are bad to our society. So how we can be integrated in a society who doesn't want us to be integrated?
Duna Haj Ahmed, thank you so much for joining us here at MEELive.
And just the last thing, please. These employees, they give contradicted information. They said first that the ILR is not included in it, and then after 6 months of ignoring me and not contacting me, when I said that you said it's not included, they said, "Oh, sorry, no, it's included, but we didn't know." And then when I said some people got it, they said because it's an urgency basis. So they give contradicted information, which makes us more uncertain.
I think we're having some connection issues, but Duna Ahmed, it was really valuable to hear your perspective on this, and thank you again. Now, these policies officially are actually supposed to be specifically addressing legal migration routes. Not that that distinction between legal and illegal immigration is strictly accurate when we're talking about refugees, but it's supposedly targeting immigration routes focused in particular on employment routes. But there is often a gap between the policy on paper and the policy on practice. So the question we want to ask now is whether these policies are, as Keir Starmer insisted, in keeping with traditional Labour values, focused in boosting workers' rights, both at home and abroad, or whether this is something different altogether, something that would mark a new direction for the Labour Party and its place in politics. And if so, why this turn? Here to answer this question is one from Labour's own ranks, MP Belle Ribeiro Addy. Belle, do I have you?
Yes.
Amazing news. Belle, does Starmer speak for the Labour Party with these proposals?
I think there are definitely a lot of concerns throughout the Labour Party. Obviously, when we're listening to certain elements of the media, it doesn't sound like yourself. Some of them, there seems to be quite a huge pushback in terms of immigration and people stressing that immigration is the problem. But it's my belief that what the issue is that politicians and the media continue to talk about immigration all the time and then turn around and say that this is people's biggest concern. And the reality of it is that it's not. When you talk to people, their biggest concerns at the moment are the cost of living crisis, and when we're talking about what happened during the recent set of elections, it was the winter fuel allowance, it was the proposed changes to disability, so many different things happening. And when people do talk about immigration, because I'm not saying that they do mention immigration, when they do, it always comes down to resources. People have been made to believe that the reason why some things might not be going right in this country is because immigrants are draining resources. But this couldn't be far from the truth. And I think part of the problem is really how we talk about immigration, how we speak about migrants, and the information that we put out there. So, for example, I don't like to talk about people who are claiming asylum as illegal migrants, or who've come via boat as legal migrants, because actually legally by international law everyone has the right to seek asylum, but for the purposes of explaining this, they'll say when they're talking about immigration that there's so many illegal migrants / people seeking asylum, and that really isn't the case. The large proportion of people that have come into this country actually are people who have come because they've been asked to fill a particular job role. There are a lot of people on different working visas in this country. And yes, indeed, immigration has soared, but that was the government's policy. This points-based immigration system was designed for more people to come into the country and fill those particular roles. So then to turn around and say now there's too many, just makes no sense. And I was listening to some polling yesterday that whilst there were some people who thought we needed to decrease immigration vastly, when you ask them, okay, should we decrease people working in care, they said no. Should we decrease doctors, they said no. Should we decrease this type of person or that type of person, they said no. So there's a recognition of need in all of these different sectors. There's just an absolute crisis of, I suppose, leadership in the way that we talk about it. And I think we need to be brave enough in actually putting the figures out there. It is far too easy to just say that immigrants are the problem.
I don't know, Belle, if you were able to hear our previous interview. It was with a woman called Duna Ahmad. She is from Syria, but she's been living in the UK for 7 years. Her leave to remain case was seemingly frozen after the fall of Assad, and she's had almost no communication about it. And now this news about the double length of waiting time to citizenship has hit her really, really hard. I mean, she made it very clear that what the government seems to think are just pieces of paper or administrative burdens are people's entire lives. I wonder if you have anything that you would say to people like Duna who are really upset on hearing this news.
Well, firstly, I am extremely concerned that we would go about this. We need to think it wasn't so long ago that immigration legislation retrospectively applied ruined people's lives. And we said we learned lessons. We said we learned lessons from the Windrush scandal. And that's exactly the type of thing that's happening. When you retrospectively apply immigration legislation in that way, it could cause some problems for people who you actually never intended to. And, it doesn't make sense that somebody who has been here for a certain period of time and who came for that certain period of time expecting to build their lives here in that way are then told something else. And actually, far from using the word strangers, I would never use that. If we go down this route, we're essentially trying to create a system of guests, and having guests who come for a short period of time obviously means they're not going to integrate. I don't think there's a problem of integration now, but if we're now saying, oh, come here for a couple of years, then, we'll send you on your way, that's not really, it's not really advertising the whole idea of integration. And more importantly, we could be creating a situation when we're losing valued skills in our country. Again, when we talk about this particular system, this points-based system, it was designed for people to come into this country. And those seeking asylum are not illegal. They have a right to seek asylum. And as we heard from your previous guests, it's not their fault that they are in this situation. And quite frankly, compared to the rest of Europe, we are not seeing as many people seeking asylum. And if we are talking about countries right across Europe doing their part, we're certainly not taking our fair share of refugees.
Mm-hmm. Now, Bal, you are firmly and consistently anti-racist, and you've called out your own party in the past when you feel that they're playing into harmful and divisive tropes. Would you agree with those who see racism in the rhetoric chosen by Starmer, or is that going too far?
What I would say is that I'm very concerned about it. I think sometimes when politicians react in this way, it is to play up to the media. And again, just like putting down certain pieces of legislation, you don't intend for something to lead there. But, language has consequences. Our policy decisions have consequences, and we have to be careful that, we don't take things too far. We can only think of what happened with those riots last year, and again that didn't come out of nowhere. It was because a culture had a very anti-migrant culture had been built up, and we have to remember that a lot of the time when people seem to think that there are many migrants in this country, they're talking about people like me. And now that's not to say that people who have come to this country, who weren't necessarily born here, don't belong here. But I remember listening to a clip of Nigel Farage just taking looking at the statistics in London, looking at statistics of different ethnicities in London, saying that we've got so many foreigners. And somebody had to carefully point out to him that actually, no, these are not foreigners. These are people by ethnicity. It says Black British, it says Black Asian. Yes, you're counting them by colours. You're not counting them by who has actually been here. First generation, second generation, third generation, people that, know no other home. So we need to be very careful about how we talk about things, because it can end up supporting that kind of rhetoric and leading to those kind of narratives, and actually emboldening people to behave in a certain way that we know is unacceptable in our society.
Can you give us a sense of how much discontent there actually is within the Labour Party over this? Is Starmer feeling the heat?
I think people are definitely extremely concerned about this, and I have no doubt that while some MPs have been more vocal about it publicly, there are definitely others who have made other representations, because they understand that particularly this type of language will not necessarily go down well in their constituencies, and we need to take another look at things.
Now, Bal, you are currently pushing for the government to reform nationality laws that you say are pricing children out of citizenship. What's the problem here, and how has the government responded to you pointing it out?
Well, at the moment, we have a situation where being born in this country doesn't even automatically make you British, which is, something that I don't take well. And I think it's, again, it was a piece of reactionary immigration legislation set about in the 1980s that put this in place. But since then, the fees have just soared. Now, whenever I talk about these people, these particular children, some people often think there must be some sort of trick. They must be, so-called illegal migrants, or their parents must be. But we're talking about people whose, again, parents may have come here, be on a 4-year visa, a 5-year visa, and then eventually go on to get indefinite leave to remain, or people who are EU nationals who had not yet registered or had got EU settled status when they had their children. Now, their children are not automatically British. They have the right to register, and this has to be very, very clear. Every single one of these children has the right to register on the basis of having a British birth certificate, for example, or actually having lived in this country since they were young. They have the right. The right is not questionable. The amount they have to pay is definitely questionable. £1,214 it currently is, the most expensive in Europe. Many times the actual administrative costs. We are literally profiteering off this, and what we have found is that even though there are now fee waivers put in place, and this was, because of a challenge that was made a few years back, people aren't even getting granted the fee waivers, and we don't know why.
Well, and finally, Belle, while we have you, you were also among 43 MPs, primarily Labour MPs, who have signed an open letter to the Foreign Secretary urging a review of UK arms exports to Israel. Do you think that there's a case of UK complicity in Israel's abuses in Gaza to worry about here?
Absolutely, and it should be very clear from the British public's response that we do not want this. We don't want to be complicit. It doesn't matter whether it's an entire weapon or a part. If we are in any way aiding in what's happening in Gaza, we are fundamentally in the wrong. And it's absolutely not in our name, and we should not be selling any arms to Israel.
Belle Ribeiro-Addy, Labour MP, thank you so much for joining us on MEELive.
Thank you.
Now, I think that that's all we officially have time for, but it's just interesting while we're sitting here talking about questions of displacement, questions of citizenship, questions of belonging. It's hard not to mention an anniversary that is marked today.
That's right. So today, for those who are observing, May 15th is Nakba Day. It's a day that Palestinians will remember 77 years on since the creation of the State of Israel, which was also coincides with the displacement of more than 700,000 Palestinians. Many of them are in diaspora today. And if I'm thinking about immigration, many of those 700,000, had they not found homes outside of Palestine, they would be stateless today. Mm-hmm. And many of them are stateless today, actually.
Yeah. Something that we always remember here at Middle East Eye is wherever in the world these stories are, they're often very connected. So thank you for joining us to see what's happening in the world and what's going on in this community that we all share.
And of course, before we lose you, we want to hear from you.
Please do send in your thoughts. You can, of course, comment on the YouTube. You can contact us via social media at Middle East Eye is our handle across platforms, or you can email meelive@middleeasteye.net.
Make sure to hit that notification bell so you know exactly when we're going live every Tuesday and every Thursday, 5 p.m. British Standard Time, or 12 if you're in New York.
See you then.